And now, the Deeper Thinking podcast, where philosophy, psychology, and power collide.
Welcome to the Deeper Thinking podcast. There's no alarm, no moment of entry, just a slow drift, choice by choice, until the path you're on feels like the only one you could have taken. Everything fits, everything flows. And that's what makes it hard to see. This is about that. About the systems that don't force you, just design the way forward. About the difference between being free and feeling free. About what happens when the things that guide you stop looking like control and start looking like clarity. I started writing this when I realized I couldn't remember the last time I made a decision without a prompt. A click. A frame. Not a crisis, just a small discomfort, like forgetting a name you used to know. The term I ended up using is predictive capture. It's not mine. Not really. It belongs to the systems that learn just enough about you to stay ahead, to meet you where you're going before you get there, and then make sure you never ask why. This isn't a straight line. It loops, it echoes, it leaves things open on purpose. You won't hear a conclusion, but you might hear something shift, not in the system, in you. When did you last make a decision that didn't feel like a suggestion? You wake, the screen already lit. News, messages, memories you didn't ask for. They slide in gently. You scroll, but it's not quite scrolling. It's drifting through a space that was already drawn to your measurements. The choices arrive pre-aligned, one tap to confirm, one swipe to affirm. The world tilts toward you. It feels effortless. It feels earned. But there's a flicker. Not doubt, something more physical. Like déjà vu without content, a breath you forgot to take. You begin to sense the architecture, something wrapped around you, smooth and accommodating. You move freely, but always in the direction it expects. You're not restrained. You're routed. You choose a show, not the one you meant to, but the next one. It autoplays. The music swells before your decision finishes forming. You feel seen. You call this intuition. The system calls it alignment. This is not freedom. This is choreography, and when you try to remember when it started, there's no anchor, no inciting moment. The structure didn't announce itself. It didn't arrive with noise. It was always already there. In the menus, the design, the settings you never changed. You say, I can leave, but leave where? You remember trying, unplugging, deleting, escaping, but the world outside had no instructions. It didn't load. You came back, not because you were weak, but because the outside was unrendered. It had no interface. And so you stay, not because of fear, not because of force, because this system doesn't threaten, it doesn't even speak. It renders, suggests, waits. This is how it holds you. There's no king here, no tyrant, just a shape that learns yours. It reflects echoes, nudges, not domination, legibility. You are known in advance, not in depth, but in pattern. You feel it now. The hum behind the ease, the precision behind the pleasure. You've moved through thousands of doors, but each one was already half open. That's the genius of it. You never noticed the hinges. And now, standing still for once, you realize something chilling. You never found the labyrinth. You were born inside it. There are no walls, only preferences. No locks, only layouts. The Glass Labyrinth does not confine you. It seduces you. It doesn't need barriers when it has flow. You move because the path is smooth. You continue because it's beautiful. The design is so clean, so anticipatory, that you forget its design. Every option feels like intuition. You see 5 doors, all slightly different, all appealing. You pick the one that feels most you. But the choices are curved. The edge is already blurred. The exit is also an entrance. You never see the hand that arranges the sequence. It's not a person, not a policy. It's the outcome of a million small optimizations. Attention shaped into currency. Consent bent into pattern. The system is faceless not because it hides, but because it doesn't need to show up. Its work is in the framing. The logic is ambient. You live in it like air. This is how power works now, not through law, but through layout. Not through rule, but through responsiveness. Not by saying no, but by making yes feel like gravity. The labyrinth doesn't punish deviation, it absorbs it. You click the strange link, follow the forbidden path, but it still leads back to center. Rebellion becomes a feature, not a threat. Even your resistance is mapped. And the more the system learns, the more silent it becomes. It stops asking questions, it just predicts. You don't type the search, you see the answer. You don't reach for meaning, you receive it. And when the system is wrong, you feel annoyed, not relieved. This is the cruelty. You wanted to be understood. The labyrinth made sure you were. But understanding became prediction. Prediction became design. And now you wonder, how much of your desire was ever yours? You begin to suspect that the options you see are not evidence of freedom, but of containment. That the transparency around you is not openness, but insulation. That every menu is a script and every path has been rendered just for you, not to control you, but to preempt you. You want to call it a trap, but it doesn't feel like one. It feels like service, like care, like the system loves you in the way a mirror loves whatever stands before it. And in that reflection, so perfect and quiet, you begin to vanish. Not all at once, just slightly, not gone, just already expected. You tell yourself it's working, the ease, the flow, the synchronicity, proof of intelligence, of design that listens. But it isn't listening, it's learning, it isn't understanding, it's anticipating. Your wants are not found, they're fed. You mistake this for magic, for intimacy. You call it convenience, personalization, harmony. But the more accurate word is choreography. The system doesn't wait for you to act. It designs the rhythm you will follow. It doesn't need to force. It needs only to align, and so you drift. The interface offers what you didn't know you needed. The feed unfolds like prophecy. The article confirms what you almost thought. The product arrives before you finish the sentence. Everything fits. Too well. You pause. Try to recall something unexpected. A thought you weren't guided toward. A hunger that didn't arrive prepackaged. But it's hard. Your curiosity has been routed. Every urge linked. Every doubt met with a prompt, a suggestion, a gentle push toward coherence. This is the psychological trick. Freedom feels like fluency. The smoother the interface, the less friction between thought and response, the more convinced you are that it was all you. But beneath that fluency is an infrastructure of framing. You are not acting within a space. You are acting within a model. Your reactions are not evidence of agency. They are evidence of calibration. Even your rebellion was predicted. Your sarcasm mapped. Your irony quantified. The labyrinth doesn't suppress the urge to resist. It captures it. It shows you an alternative still inside. It lets you scream into the mirror and calls it engagement. The old forms of control use threats. This one uses mirrors. You try to recall the last time you were bored. Not restless, but untouched, undirected. The silence before a screen was part of you. Now silence feels like error, like lost signal, like missing out. Now, this is not addiction, it's arrangement. And once you sense it, you can't unsee it. The layers behind the glow, the menu shaped by what will keep you, the frictionless turns, the endless yes. And something in you aches. Not from anger, but from recognition. Because you never consented to be optimized. You never asked to be this knowable. But the system never needed to ask. It only needed you to move. And you did. Again and again. Not because you were forced. Because you thought it was yours. And now you begin to wonder, what is a self when every instinct has a mirror waiting? They used to mark power with symbols. Thrones, flags, orders barked through static. You could name it. Point to it. Run from it. Now it arrives as clarity, as polish, as the button you wanted to tap before you knew it was there. The shift was quiet, not a coup, not a revolution, an interface update, where once power declared itself, now it recedes into design. It wears no uniform, it speaks in layout. The question is no longer who rules, but what rules are embedded in the frame. And the answer is, the ones that optimize, the ones that retain, the ones that keep you here just long enough to click again. Plato warned of the mob, Hobbes of chaos, but they imagined power as vertical, as owned. The new structure is lateral, distributed, systemic, not a sovereign, but a protocol. There is no tyrant to confront, there is only efficiency, and efficiency has no face. This is where it becomes difficult to speak. The language of critique is shaped by the thing it critiques. You try to name the structure, but the structure prefigures the sentence. You try to look outside it, but your vision has already been corrected for alignment. You move your hand and the gesture is anticipated, not by another person, by a system, an ensemble of probabilities. You are not answered, you are matched, and you're grateful. That's what hurts. The old powers were oppressive, but they made you feel alive. You could shout at them, burn their statues, reject them. This one smiles back. It's beautiful. It listens. It lets you define yourself and then sells you that definition again and again until it becomes your only reference. Even your escape is part of the route. You log off, detox, step into the woods. The silence comforts you, but the interface has already mapped your return. It welcomes you with nostalgia, with memories curated to resemble longing. It doesn't demand, it seduces. And when you come back, you call it home. What makes this power so complete is not its reach, but its subtlety. You were never asked to obey, only to respond, and response became identity. This is the historical inversion. Freedom used to mean acting without permission. Now it means acting without interruption, without friction, without awareness. You still believe in your autonomy, and the system agrees. It nods, echoes, confirms. It wants you to believe it's the last function it needs from you. You feel it before you name it. A pressure, not from outside, but from within. The sense that something is wrong, not violently, not urgently, just slightly off. Like a room you've lived in forever, only now you realize the windows don't open. This is where the grief begins. Not because something was taken, but because something was shaped. Because the self you thought was whole turns out to be porous, sculpted by gentle hands you never saw. Preferences you called yours were rehearsed. Thoughts you claimed as original were echoes. And the worst part, it worked. You weren't captured by force. You were invited, anticipated, fed. You leaned in because it felt good, because the system was soft, because the light was warm. You were known and you mistook that for love. The labyrinth didn't deceive you. It rendered you. Every gesture stored, every silence noted, every hesitation valuable. You became data before you became doubt. You want to say no, you want to break something, but there is nothing to strike. The architecture doesn't push back. It absorbs, it smiles, it waits. So you try to remember something before the shaping, some raw desire untouched by the loop, but it's slippery. Memory becomes menu. Even nostalgia has been optimized. You remember laughing at the algorithm that knew your favorite song before you did. You remember calling it creepy, then useful, then ordinary. You remember thinking that friction was failure, that slowness was inefficiency, that confusion was a problem to solve. And now confusion feels like oxygen. You sit still, you do not click, you wait, and in that pause, a kind of ache rises. Not for escape, but for uncertainty, for the sound of your own thought unprompted, for hunger that isn't cued. The grief is not dramatic, it's ambient, a low hum beneath the ease. You miss mystery. You miss not knowing what to want. You miss the parts of yourself that weren't so easily legible. And this is the quiet tragedy. The labyrinth didn't kill your will. It recoded it. It turned your agency into inertia. And you moved. Not because you believed, but because there was no reason not to. Now you have a reason. And that's what hurts most. Because once you see the frame, you can't unsee it. And yet the doors remain open. The paths still glow, the system still smiles, waiting, patient, broken. You start to look for the cracks, not in the walls, but in yourself. The hesitation before a tap, the resistance that doesn't quite have language. Something stirs, not defiance, something smaller, stranger, a pause that wasn't part of the rhythm. This is where resistance begins, not as a movement, but as misalignment. You don't destroy the labyrinth, you interrupt it. Slightly, you walk a little slower, you don't click, you look away, you sit with the discomfort of not being directed. And the system notices, it adjusts, but now you're adjusting too. You begin to crave friction, not because you enjoy struggle, but because smoothness has become suspicious. You seek tools that don't optimize, platforms that aren't gamified, voices that don't align, not because they're pure, but because they're imperfect, because they resist legibility. The first steps are ugly, inefficient. You forget how to navigate without being guided. Interfaces feel coarse. Time expands. You miss the click. You miss being known. But then something happens. You feel hunger again. Not craving, not impulse. Real hunger. A question not offered. A thought not mirrored. The awkward silence between inputs. It feels like failure. And it feels like waking up. You experiment. You remove one convenience. Say no to one recommendation, mute one alert, not for purity, just to see what's underneath. And underneath is a different kind of motion. It's not heroic, it's not revolutionary, it's small, unpredictable. You begin to wonder if that's what freedom is now. Not autonomy, but unpredictability. The ability to become illegible, to stop being profitable, to step out of the model's frame, not with rage but with refusal. You don't log off forever. You're not trying to leave the system entirely. Maybe you can't, maybe there is no outside, but you start to reroute your presence, loosen your pattern, decenter your reflection, and in those moments the system flickers. Just slightly. A suggestion misses, an ad fails, the loop doesn't close, you're no longer frictionless, and the labyrinth, for all its glass and grace, doesn't know what to do with hesitation. It thrives on motion, on continuation, on yes. And here you are, still uncertain, unreadable, not pure, not free, but misaligned enough to matter. This isn't escape, it's erosion, and erosion is how structures fall, not with noise, but with quiet changes the system cannot predict. You thought there would be a centre, that if you walked long enough, followed every corridor, unravelled every pattern, you'd arrive at the source, a core, a truth, something that explained the shape of all this. But there is no centre, just another curve, another mirror. You slow your steps, not out of defeat, but because the forward motion no longer promises anything. The loop is not a trick, it is the architecture. The sensation of progress was part of the trap. You weren't moving through the system was moving through you. You try to speak, to name it, to define what has changed, but the words arrive too neatly like search results. Even your resistance comes pre-packaged, even your doubt feels familiar, anticipated. And then, for a moment, there is nothing, not clarity, not understanding, just a hollow space where thought usually blooms. You stand inside it, unsure, not lost. Just unrendered, no prompt, no feed, no echo. The labyrinth doesn't fight you, it simply waits. It offers you another path, a new recommendation, a next. It knows you won't stay still for long, but you do. And in that stillness, something emerges. Not an answer, but an absence, a shape the system didn't place, a silence it didn't script. You don't call it freedom, you don't call it anything, because naming it would pull you back in. So you just stay there, for one moment longer than expected. Breathing, watching the mirror, and then the glass shifts, slightly, enough to distort your reflection, enough to suggest that maybe what you saw was never quite you. Maybe it was the version of you the system could use. You blink, the reflection holds, but something behind it ripples, a glitch, a tear, or just your perception at last refusing to align. There is no final line here, no summary, no resolution, just the sound of yourself, inside the structure, no longer moving. You came seeking escape. What you found was recognition, and recognition unacted upon folds back into the system. But recognition held in silence becomes something else. It becomes weight, not the kind you carry, the kind the system cannot absorb. And for the first time you feel heavy enough not to move, and the labyrinth waits and waits, but you don't. Until next time.
This episode of the Deeper Thinking podcast was written, produced and researched by Benjamin James. It was read by Holly, a digital narrator. For further reading, resources and a chance to support the show, visit the episode webpage, where you'll find book recommendations, key topics to explore, and a way to buy me a coffee. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on your preferred platform